What if I told you that stupidity isn't just the absence of intelligence? It's something deeper, more dangerous. What if it's not ignorance that threatens our future, but a subtle force that hijacks brilliant minds and turns them into passive tools of destruction? Imagine this. A celebrated scientist starts sharing conspiracy theories. A teacher begins endorsing harmful ideologies. A caring parent makes decisions that put their child in danger. They're not evil. They're not dumb. These are thoughtful, intelligent people, but they've stopped thinking. And that, according to German philosopher Dietrich Bonhoeffer, is where the real danger begins. This video isn't about random bad decisions. It's about how a certain kind of stupidity, what Bonhoeffer called the power of stupidity, can infect entire societies. And here's the scary part. It's not just happening to other people. It's happening to people like you and me. Smart people. Good people. People who stop thinking not because they're incapable, but because the system rewards them for it. Let's explore why. Obedience without thought. The Mgrim Experiment. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Mgrim conducted one of the most unsettling experiments in modern psychology. He brought ordinary people into a lab at Yale. Each participant believed they were helping in a study on memory. Their role: administer electric shocks to a person in another room every time that person gave a wrong answer. What they didn't know was that the victim was an actor. The shocks weren't real, but the reactions, screams, begging, silence were very real to the participants. And despite hearing what they believed was genuine suffering, 65% of people delivered what they thought were lethal shocks, just because someone in a lab coat told them to. These weren't sadists. They were average people. People who had in that moment given up their ability to think and judge for themselves. Bonhoeffer saw this same pattern unfold in Nazi Germany. And what he wrote from his prison cell in 1943 remains one of the most haunting observations about human nature ever put to paper. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests nor force accomplish anything here. Reasons fall on deaf ears. Who was Dietrich Bonhoeffer? Bonhoeffer wasn't a detached academic. He was a German Lutheran pastor and theologian who saw his country crumble from within. Born into a prestigious family, his father a leading psychiatrist, he believed in education, in ethics, in reason. But as the Nazis rose to power, Bonhoeffer watched in disbelief as well-educated moral people began supporting ideologies that directly contradicted everything they claimed to believe. It wasn't just the uninformed who fell in line. It was professors, doctors, clergy, intellectuals. They weren't manipulated by propaganda alone. They surrendered to it. And that's what led Bonhoeffer to his theory of stupidity. Stupidity is not what you think. When Bonhoeffer used the word stupidity, he wasn't insulting people's intelligence. He wasn't talking about IQ or education level. He was describing something much more dangerous: functional stupidity, the willful suspension of independent thinking, often in service of power, comfort, or group identity. Bonhoeffer wrote, "The stupid person is not independent." In conversation with him, one virtually feels that one is dealing not at all with him as a person, but with slogans, catchwords, and the like that have taken possession of him. Stupidity in this sense isn't about mental capacity. It's about what happens when people stop thinking for themselves and start letting systems, ideologies, or groups do their thinking for them. And according to Bonhoeffer, this is what makes it so terrifying. Unlike evil, which carries its own weight of guilt and resistance, stupidity is convinced it's doing the right thing, which means it cannot be corrected. Why stupidity serves power? Here's where it gets even more unsettling. Bonhoeffer noticed that stupidity seems to grow stronger under certain conditions, especially when people feel powerless or afraid. He observed that people don't just become stupid individually, they do it as a group. They lose the thread of independent thought. They outsource their judgment to slogans, movements, or authority figures. This is what makes stupidity such a useful tool for those in power. You don't have to censor people if they censor themselves. You don't have to suppress information if you've made people stop processing it. Stupidity is systemic, not just personal. Let's fast forward to today. You don't need a dictatorship to create this kind of mass intellectual surrender. Our current systems do the job just fine. Think about it. Social media platforms profit when you react emotionally, not think critically. News outlets thrive on outrage, not nuance. Politicians win by repeating slogans, not offering substance. And when you're exhausted from work, drowning in debt, or overwhelmed by information, thinking independently isn't just hard, it feels impossible. Economists call this rational ignorance, the idea that it's actually more efficient for individuals to stay uninformed, especially about complex issues. But the result? Collective irrationality. Just like Bonhoeffer saw in Germany. A society full of smart individuals making collectively stupid decisions, not because they're bad people, but because the system quietly nudges them toward mental shortcuts. Your brain is wired for stupidity, and it gets worse. Our brains are designed to take shortcuts. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger introduced the concept of cognitive dissonance. It's the discomfort we feel when we encounter information that contradicts what we already believe. When that discomfort shows up, your brain wants to resolve it quickly. So it either changes the belief, which is hard, or rejects the new information, which is easy. And guess what makes this reflex stronger? Stress, fear, insecurity. Exactly what our systems maximize every single day. Bonhoeffer saw this coming. He wrote, "It becomes clear that stupidity is not a psychological problem, but a sociological one." In other words, people aren't dumb in isolation. They become dumb when they're surrounded by incentives not to think. Stupidity is contagious. Decades later, research would confirm Bonhoeffer's observations. In the 1950s, psychologist Salem ran a famous experiment. He put participants in a group where everyone but one person was in on the study. They were shown a simple line test and asked to match the length. The answer was obvious, but when everyone else gave the wrong answer, 75% of participants went along with the group at least once, even though they knew it was wrong. Now translate that to today's world. Social media doesn't just create echo chambers, it amplifies them. Algorithms reward whatever gets the most emotional reaction, which means lies that feel good spread faster than truths that feel hard. A 2018 MIT study found that false information spreads 6 times faster on Twitter than the truth. Why? Because it's easier to believe what confirms your biases than to sit with complex, inconvenient realities. The algorithmic echo chamber. Now picture this. You scroll through your feed and it shows you exactly what you already believe. Not by chance, but by design. This is not just convenience. It's conditioning. Every like, every share, every scroll is feeding data into systems that learn your emotional triggers better than you do. The result? You're shown more of what you'll react to, what confirms your worldview, what flatters your perspective, what demands no critical thinking. This is the architecture of what Bonhoeffer feared most: chosen ignorance. Not because people lack access to truth, but because they're gently guided away from ever needing to confront it. And here's where it gets worse. We've stopped thinking, and we've started feeling our way through reality. Emotional satisfaction has replaced intellectual effort. And when you build an information ecosystem that runs on outrage and affirmation, you don't get enlightenment. You get delusion. This isn't new. You've seen this before. We all have. The Salem witch trials weren't carried out by monsters. They were driven by ordinary people, neighbors, parents, clergy, who sincerely believed they were protecting their communities. During the Red Scare of the 1950s, educated, patriotic Americans supported censorship, blacklisting, and persecution. Why? Because they thought they were defending democracy. Again and again, intelligent people have surrendered their judgment to the comfort of consensus and the seduction of certainty. Bonhoeffer's point wasn't that people are unintelligent. His point was this: smart people stop thinking when thinking becomes socially, emotionally, or economically expensive. And that's the trap we're all walking into. How do we fight back? If the danger isn't ignorance but functional stupidity, how do we resist it? Bonhoeffer's answer wasn't easy. He called it costly grace. The decision to think critically, even when it costs you your comfort, your certainty, your reputation, even your relationships. Today, we have another name for this: intellectual courage. And while it sounds noble, it's hard. Especially in a world designed to make intellectual laziness feel rewarding and safe. But here's the truth. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to win debates. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to stay curious and honest, even when it hurts. 4 daily practices of mental resistance. So how do we build this courage practically? Here are 4 habits you can use to fight back every single day. 1. Practice intellectual friction. Once a week, read or watch something that challenges your views. Not to agree with it, but to test your ideas, to see if they're solid enough to hold up under pressure. This isn't masochism. It's mental strength training. If your beliefs can't survive scrutiny, maybe they're not beliefs worth holding. 2. Embrace productive ignorance. When you're absolutely certain about something, ask yourself, what evidence could change my mind? If the answer is nothing, that's a red flag. Certainty without falsifiability isn't knowledge. It's ideology. And ideologies left unchecked are fertile ground for functional stupidity. 3. Slow down before you share. Before you repost, retweet, or comment, pause. Take 60 seconds. Ask, is this true? Is it helpful? Is it from a reliable source? That single minute could break the chain of algorithmic manipulation that feeds on emotional reaction. 4. Say I don't know seriously. When someone asks something you're unsure about, just say it. I don't know. In a world that rewards confident ignorance over humble honesty, admitting uncertainty is revolutionary. You create space to learn, to explore, to think. Systems must change. 2. Let's be clear, this isn't just an individual problem. If our structures reward stupidity, we need new structures. That means social platforms disclosing how their algorithms work and how they shape what we see. Public funding for media literacy education, teaching people how to assess sources, spot bias, and question information. Online platforms that reward nuance, honesty, and curiosity, not just hot takes and viral outrage. Economic reforms that reduce chronic stress because people who are constantly in survival mode don't have the mental bandwidth to engage in complex thought. Bonhoeffer understood that it's hard to think when you're afraid, when you're overwhelmed, when you feel powerless. We need systems that empower people to think, not just with slogans, but with capacity. Our brains were built for simplicity. Here's what Bonhoeffer couldn't have known, but you need to. Modern neuroscience confirms everything he feared. Our brains evolved to prioritize speed over accuracy. When you're in danger, you don't stop to fact-check. You react. Fight or flight. Us versus them. Simple good versus evil. In the jungle that kept us alive. But in the information age, It keeps us blind. Today's enemies aren't predators in tall grass. They're dopamine-optimized headlines, viral sound bites, manipulative memes, weaponized misinformation, AI-generated deepfakes, and the algorithms that feed them don't care what's true. They care what gets attention, and that means your brain, already predisposed to shortcut thinking, is now up against billion-dollar systems designed to exploit your every emotional impulse. The threat has escalated. Bonhoeffer watched propaganda spread through newspapers and radio. We're living through something exponentially worse. Real-time echo chambers, viral conspiracy chains, fake experts with millions of followers, deepfakes that look and sound real, bots that mimic real people and amplify outrage. It's not just manipulation anymore. It's cognitive warfare. And we're not just being targeted by governments or corporations. We're being targeted by machine learning systems that evolve faster than we can process them. Bonhoeffer saw evil in human form. Today, we face systems that exploit our very architecture of thought. What happened during COVID-19? Let's look at a modern example. During the COVID pandemic, doctors, engineers, lawyers, highly educated people began spreading debunked theories, not because they were unintelligent, but because they were scared, overwhelmed, emotionally exhausted, and stuck inside echo chambers. This wasn't a failure of IQ. It was a failure of intellectual independence under pressure, exactly what Bonhoeffer described. The cost of thinking. Bonhoeffer died for his refusal to conform. On April 9, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender, he was executed by hanging. His last words, "This is the end for me, the beginning of life." He didn't die just resisting political tyranny. He died resisting intellectual tyranny, because he understood something many still don't. When people stop thinking, they stop being fully human. They become puppets. They become amplifiers of whatever voice is loudest, whatever system is strongest. And the only way out, to choose discomfort, to choose the harder path, to keep asking when it would be easier to accept, to think when it would be easier to feel, to pause when it would be easier to share. Who stands fast? In one of his final letters, Dietrich Bonhoeffer posed a question that still haunts today. Who stands fast? Who resists when the world demands surrender? Who still thinks when it's easier to follow? Who holds the line when the cost of truth is exile? His question isn't abstract, it's deeply personal, because the answer has never depended on intelligence or education or how many books you've read. It comes down to something far simpler and far harder. The daily decision to stay curious when certainty feels good. The daily decision to seek truth when lies are easier to live with. The daily decision to think when silence keeps the peace. The illusion of liberation. Here's the tragic twist. Intellectual surrender often feels like freedom. When you stop asking questions, life gets easier. You fit in. You avoid conflict. You feel secure. But it's not real freedom. It's sedation. It's comfort that comes at the cost of your autonomy. Because thinking real thinking is hard. It requires you to sit in discomfort, to hold conflicting ideas in your head, to admit you might be wrong. Bonhoeffer argued that this kind of tension, the discomfort of awareness, is the very essence of what makes us human. To escape it is to give up something essential, your mind. The trap we're all in. And here's the uncomfortable truth. None of us are immune. The moment we think we are, the moment we say, "That could never happen to me," we're already starting to lose the battle. Because functional stupidity doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you, "You already know enough. Don't question that it's settled. People like us believe this. It's not worth the fight." It lulls you into certainty, and certainty left untested becomes the soft pillow on which critical thought goes to die. The real enemy, Bonhoeffer's insight, was that we don't need external tyrants to lose our freedom. We lose it the moment we stop taking responsibility for our own minds. In a world full of noise, distraction, and emotional manipulation, the most dangerous enemy isn't out there. It's the voice inside that says, just go along. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Stay quiet. Bonhoeffer refused to obey that voice. He didn't just resist evil. He resisted comfort. He resisted laziness of thought. He resisted the ease of blind obedience. The cost of freedom, and yes, it cost him everything. But his final words were not bitter. They were full of clarity. They were full of peace. This is the end for me, the beginning of life. That is what it means to die free. Not because you had all the answers, but because you never stopped asking the hard questions. The new front line. So where does that leave us? We are not in 1940s Germany. We are not facing dictatorship in the traditional sense. But we are in the middle of a war for our attention, our thoughts, and our discernment. And this war is waged not with bombs, but with clickbait. Not with tanks, but with trending hashtags. Not with armies, but with algorithms. It's subtle. It's relentless. And it's happening in every scroll, every feed, every autoplay video. The battlefield is your mind. And the question Bonhoeffer left us with echoes louder than ever. Who stands fast? The tools of resistance. So how do we fight? Not with rage, not with fear, not even with intellectual superiority, but with discipline, with humility, with practice. Let me offer you a simple framework, one I call the thinking loop. It's not perfect, but it's practical, and it works. Step 1. Question first. Reactions before you repost. Respond or react, pause. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Who benefits from this message? Is this emotion trying to inform me or control me? That small pause creates space, and space is where thought begins. Step 2. Seek contradiction. For every strong opinion you hold, seek out the best counter-argument. Don't strawman your opponent, steelman them. Let your beliefs wrestle with the best of the other side. If they survive, they're stronger. If they don't, you've grown. Step 3. Admit what you don't know. Normalize the words. I'm not sure. Normalize changing your mind. In a world that glorifies absolute certainty, admitting intellectual humility is an act of rebellion. Step 4. Elevate slow thinking. We are wired for fast thinking, quick takes, emotional reflexes. But truth rarely lives there. Truth hides in the quiet corners of complexity where you have to slow down and listen. Reflect. Research. Sit with the uncomfortable. Make time for slow thought reading, journaling, long conversations without a phone in sight. This isn't luxury, it's self-defense. The bigger picture. Bonhoeffer's warning isn't just about politics or history. It's about protecting the future of human thought itself. We're entering an age where artificial stupidity shallow takes manipulated feeds. Emotional bait is threatening to overwhelm genuine wisdom. And every time we choose curiosity over certainty, we push back. Every time we say, I don't know, let me find out, we resist. Every time we choose evidence over emotion, patience over performance, nuance over noise, we reclaim a piece of our mind. A personal challenge. So here's my challenge to you. This week, pick one belief you hold with total confidence. Maybe it's political. Maybe it's spiritual. Maybe it's about relationships, work, or life. Now spend 30 minutes reading the best arguments against it. Not to destroy yourself, but to test yourself. If your belief survives, you'll believe it more clearly. If it doesn't, you've just taken one step closer to truth. That's what intellectual courage looks like. That's what resistance sounds like. The end, or the beginning, If this video made you uncomfortable, that's not a problem. It's a start. Bonhoeffer didn't ask us to be fearless. He asked us to be thoughtful. He didn't say we had to be right all the time. He asked us not to stop trying. The greatest threat to civilization isn't bad ideas. It's people who've stopped thinking. So let this be your invitation to choose curiosity over comfort, to question not just others, but yourself, to become, in the deepest sense, someone who stands fast. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who thinks. And in the comments, answer this. What's one belief you're willing to challenge this week? Let's keep the flame of human thought alive, one question, one conversation, one honest moment at a time. In a world built to make you surrender your mind, choosing to think is the most radical act you can commit.